Welcome back, everyone. PKBAG here with another video. This time, a little different, go a little different direction. We are going to be looking at Pickleball Paddle Reviewers. So tonight on PKBAG, Battle of the Reviewers, starring John Kew, Chris Olson, Pickleball Studios, and Braydon from Pickleball Effects. Okay, that voice, that might not go over well, but try to be a little dramatic. It doesn't always work. We're going to compare. We've got 3 databases now, and we're going to take a look at these guys. Great reviewers. They've got databases online. We're going to take a look, deep dive, and see what the differences are and what they have to offer. So in their databases, and this is of a certain date, so they're always increasing the number of paddles in their databases, but right now, number of paddles between the 3, we've got John at 78 paddles. Chris, significant amount more, 238. Braydon's a little closer to John at 77. So these are the number of paddles in their database that they have data on, that they've reviewed. We're just going to be objective and try to paint you a picture for who does what here. Price-wise, the average price, they're all very similar. John's at $185, Chris $180, Braydon at $195. Kind of tells me Braydon looks at more of the higher-end stuff. And I also know Chris has a section of paddles that are sub $100. So that's interesting, but you can see here that's all pretty important. Other data includes swing weight. They're all pretty much the same. Twist weight, they're all the averages roughly the same as well. 6.1, 6.22, 6.24 across the board. Spin is a little different. So John's at 1816 average. Chris is a little lower. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because of those sub 100 paddles. They just don't spin very well. And Braydon does not use RPMs. So he uses a different kind of scale, which we're going to look at next. Braydon's spin stats, he goes off of low, medium, high, very high. And you can see here, high and very high, most of the paddles he looks at have spin probably 16 or 1700 RPMs and more. Overall, all 3 of them have their own separate website as well. John Kew, his website's a little more basic, includes paddle and ball data. Now, if you've seen John's videos, he does a lot of work. He makes great, entertaining videos, very good graphics, you know, I like a lot of his reviews. Chris has a little more going on. He has the links to his reviews, the databases. He has a link to his podcast, and he's a little bit of merchandise. Braydon's probably the most robust. He also has reviews. He has a quiz to fit you into the right paddle. A bunch of different links. He has a bio on his history. He has some merch, talks about his podcast, and stuff like that. Let's move on. More stats about these 3 guys. John, in terms of YouTube, he's got 7,700 subscribers. Chris has quite a bit more at 21K. Braydon, a respectable 5,600, and I mean, I'd be more than happy to have like 100 subscribers right now. That would be great. So, you know, podcast-wise, John is not on a podcast that I know of. Chris is on a podcast, and so is Braydon. Chris's podcast he does with Pickleball Will, and Braydon has his with Downtown Logan Brown. Both very entertaining. I've listened to both multiple times. They cover topics very quickly. The audio is very good. The video is very good. They have a variety of topics. And what I like in a podcast, so a little bit of this video being my opinion. So in a podcast, sometimes they talk about paddles. That's a green check for me. I like that. When they get into MLP and PPA type talk, it kind of loses me a little bit. So I'm not a big fan just because I have a disconnect with what goes on at a higher level with the professionals. It just doesn't seem to be interesting to me. I just don't have any connection with that kind of information. And then sometimes they have guest interviews, which I think are great. They talk to paddle manufacturers, managers, owners who've created their own paddles and their own paddle companies. Sometimes they have professionals on that talk about what goes on behind the scenes. I do like that, unless the conversation, again, goes back to PPA, MLP type stuff. Then it kind of gets a little more dry for me. Anyway, so we're off the rails at this point. We got to get back into some paddle data, according to these guys. And so here's an interesting mix of data. So I wanted to find out which paddles or how many paddles each of them reviewed the same of. And basic information here, we've got our little Venn diagram. So we know Chris has the most at 238 paddles he's reviewed. John's got 78, Braydon 77. So between Chris and John, they've reviewed 55 that are the same. And between Braydon and Chris, about 60. So there's a little bit of overlap there. Between Braydon and John, they've reviewed 35 of the same paddles. And that's mainly because they just have lower numbers altogether. The number of paddles all three of them have reviewed is 33. So those are going to be a lot of the most common paddles, Rhombus, a lot of Selkirks, probably the Filth, some of the Rhombus ones, there's a bunch. And the way I figured this out was if you have their databases side by side, you can do what's called a VLOOKUP in Excel, but it's a little harder to do when it comes to text-based data, because if someone has a paddle and they put in their database Pro 2 and then someone else has it Pro II, which is Roman numerals for 2, the VLOOKUP isn't going to find those because it's not the exact same text. So I was able to use VLOOKUP and then fill in some of the gaps to find the links between them. So that kind of gives you a little bit of information there on how many they reviewed in common. Brands I found that were not common, Chris has a bunch that I've never heard of. I'm going to have to look up some of these. Cliff Pickleball, One Shot, Pick Ninja, Rockney. Is that how you pronounce that? I'm not sure. John had one I didn't know, Revelin, and Braydon also included One Shot. And these are just ones that I kind of look at and go, never heard of that brand. Obviously, 2023 is a huge year for new brands to come out and release their paddles. And these are some that I have never seen. Other reviewers out there. So John, Chris, and Braydon have their own pickleball database for you to look at, but there are other pickleball reviewers, pickleball paddle reviewers, and I think they deserve some honorable mention. First one that comes to mind, Farmer Lankey. This guy's great. I think if you haven't seen a video from him, he's a lot of fun. Sometimes he's outside with his chickens giving a review. His brother chimes in and they show some good B-roll of them playing inside. STS Pickleball, this guy's pretty cool. He's got a neat website, and if you read his bio, he's making chocolate in a business. He used to play golf. I mean, all kinds of stuff. This guy is very good. He's got very good reviews and good production there. To Pickleball and Beyond, these guys are fun, and they get right to it. They love reviewing paddles. Again, good production on their videos, good B-roll. And Jordan Yeager, under the Briones Pickleball umbrella, he started doing some reviews as well. So there's Farmer Lankey, there's STS, there's Ryan and Vino from To Pickleball and Beyond, and there's Jordan. Look at these guys. I mean, who doesn't want to listen to these guys for another opinion on a paddle? And again, there's other reviewers out there as well. Actually, STS, this guy, he's got his own database with about 100 paddles, and I just found that out. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to analyze his as well. I feel like there's almost too much data for me to look at. But yeah, check these guys out, and others as well are out there and growing all the same. So other than that, that's all I got. Next up, we're going to look at possible year-end review by the numbers. We've got year-end reviews out there, top 10, top 5, top 3, multiple categories. We're going to see what comes on top and if they make sense. And honestly, to reach out to you, what kind of stuff do you want to see that I could drum up from these databases? Would be objective, it would be by the numbers, averages, etc. Feel free to leave a comment. I want to know what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share. I appreciate all your time watching my videos. And next time you play, tell somebody they made a nice shot. See you next time.